Hey guys, Tom here again from synthhacker.com. Welcome back to another tutorial for Serum. In this video we're going to be looking at quite a relatively simple sound from a future-based track by Illenium. I think it's called Fortress. And it was requested, and it's just kind of like this simple like saw wave pad. I guess it's kind of a pad, but it's a little bit more upfront than a pad would be, and it is kind of like the main melodic element in the drop of the track. And yeah, I'll show you what it sounds like, and then we'll begin making it from scratch. Really cool sound, and you know, on its own it sounds kind of a little bit simple, but because in the track, you know, you've got all those elements that you just heard, and then like a really nice vocal over the top, which kind of gets the most attention. You know, this sound doesn't need to be anything, you know, too complicated. But that being said, there's a few tips that I can give you during this tutorial to kind of get the most out of this sound and get the kind of airy sound that you want it to have as well. So yeah, we're going to be making this completely from scratch as always, so I'll go ahead and initialize the patch. And as always guys, if you haven't done so already, definitely go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com to check out my presets for Serum. That's really the reason that I can keep you know, pumping out these tutorials as often as I can, and you know, I really do appreciate all the support on the channel so far, and thanks in advance if you do decide to go check that out. But without further ado, let's begin making this sound completely from scratch. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that oscillator A, B and the noise oscillator are on. We're not going to be using the sub oscillator. You will have heard some low end in that demo at the start, but that was just literally a distorted sine wave just from another instance of Serum, just to fill out the low end to kind of demonstrate how the sound would work in a mix. And what we're going to do, we're just going to keep both of these oscillators as the default square wave, but we're going to pitch down oscillator A -1 octave. And then for both of these oscillators, we're just going to add 7 voices of unison and bring the detune down a little bit. I've mentioned this a few times in tutorials, but I don't think I've mentioned it in a while, and just in case you've not seen many of my Serum tutorials before, these voices of unison are essentially different versions of this sound that are all slightly detuned from one another, and the effect that has is basically thickening the sound up. You know, because you don't actually perceive these necessarily as 7 different voices, you perceive it as one sound, which sounds much bigger than it actually is, which is a really cool way to fatten up sounds, especially like this, which is a relatively simple sound. That being said, you know, you don't necessarily always want to kind of push this unison up as high as it can go. First, mainly because, you know, it can be really taxing on your processing power of your computer, but also because if you have too many voices of unison, the kind of stereo image, or like the image that you kind of perceive, becomes a little bit blurry, and it doesn't have as much of a good effect as you kind of would like. So I recommend about 7. You know, if you look up some research on the internet, you know, 7 is considered like kind of like the magic number of unison. I'd be quite interested to look into exactly why that is, but I just kind of know it works, and that's what I use in these sounds. The noise we're going to use to kind of fill out the frequency range a bit on this sound as well is, I think I use the analog ARP white noise, which I just had the level at about 1/4, something like that. Next, for our amplitude envelope, I just added a little bit of attack to the sound. You know, you can achieve this with sidechain on the kick, or you can do it this way. It's completely up to you, or you can do both, which is I think what I did, just a little bit of both. And this just means that every time the chord's pressed, which is probably going to be when there's a kick playing, you know, it kind of has this really nice sidechain type effect where the sound kind of like sucks up, which is really cool. I didn't add any release to the sound because it didn't really need it, to be honest. And then moving on to the filter, this actually isn't doing much in the sound. You know, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, but it's kind of hard to explain. But if you, it's probably because of like the analog model of the filter, but sometimes, you know, even if you don't need a filter, just routing it through the filter kind of adds something. And to be honest, if I'm completely honest, I don't really know how to explain that. You know, it's just kind of something that I've kind of picked up on when designing sounds, is that sometimes even if you don't need a filter, just kind of passing it through one, it's probably something to do with the algorithms that are set up. It just kind of adds like a nice bit of polish to the sound. Make sure that oscillator A and B are being routed through the filter. I didn't actually route the noise through the filter there. And I think I just had the cutoff quite like about 75%, so it's kind of slightly rolling off the very high end, but then because there's a little bit of resonance, it's giving this kind of nice little bump to the high end, which is quite nice. It kind of adds that area effect, but we're also going to kind of achieve that through using EQ later on as well. So I think that pretty much covers everything in this section that I had set up. Next we're going to set up an EQ like I just mentioned, and I put this to the top of the signal chain in the effects, and what I did was basically just roll off some high end using the Q, and then push the frequency up a little bit just to kind of roll off that low end. One thing to notice, or to kind of take notice of, is that these kind of saw waves, you know, you definitely, well, you're pretty much always, for this type of sound, going to be playing chords, right? And you do kind of want there to be some low end as a result of this sound. But what happens is if you kind of play chords at really low frequencies, what happens is you kind of get this like beating effect between notes, and the low end becomes a little bit blurry and a little bit muddy. So what I'd instead consider doing, and which is what I did for this, was you know, kind of roll off the low end on this sound, and then have another instance of Serum, which is just playing one note at a time, probably like the bottom note of your chord, which is just kind of filling out the low end, and it'll sound much cleaner that way. So that's just one tip I can give you. The other thing I did, again, to add to kind of like the kind of airy sound that we're going after for this saw, was just kind of use a shelf EQ to just boost some of the high end. I brought the frequency up a little bit, somewhere around there, and kept the gain where it is. And then I actually don't know why I did this, because I made this sound a while ago, but I actually added another high pass filter. It doesn't really matter whether you use a normal one or the Moog one. And then just brought the cutoff down a little bit, had the resonance down, drive frequency down, and then mix full. Again, I think I had this on originally to get rid of some of the low end, similar to what the EQ is doing now. But I found that after I took the filter off, for some reason it didn't sound quite as I wanted it. But I mean, you can kind of play around with this. If you kind of prefer it without then you can kind of take it off. It's completely up to you. The next thing I did was, at the end of the effects chain, was use some multiband compression, just really to kind of suck all the like really nice bits out of the sound out, which I'll kind of show you right now. It really kind of like polishes the sound off right at the end, and just kind of brings up all the like really just subtle characteristics of the sound, which is really, really cool. And yeah, that actually pretty much concludes the sound, guys. So hopefully you got a lot of use out of this tutorial. Quite a basic sound, but pretty cool nevertheless. I really like the track that this sound is from as well. Illenium seems like a really, really great producer. And a couple of you guys have kind of emailed me, you know, wanting to know how he made his sound. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything. Really nice kind of simple sound that is really kind of versatile. Actually, you could use it in a lot of different genres. And yeah, that covers everything. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you want to kind of stay up to date with new tutorials, definitely go ahead and subscribe to the channel and leave a like if this video helped you out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those down below, and if you haven't done so already, definitely go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com to check out my presets for Serum and other synths. That's all from me, guys. I really do appreciate all the support on the channel so far. My channel's been growing really, really fast recently, which has just been absolutely awesome. And yeah, that's all from me, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.